I'm actually not cold, but I was just telling Elise how much I love this weather. The weather is starting to feel somewhat warm and enjoyable. I'm gonna do that. Okay. Week 7. Next week. It's halfway. Ma'am. Yes. Okay. Well, we have our exam next Thursday. Yep. That'll be open all day Thursday. Yeah. Okay. Just let me know. Yep.
Something fun out. No, I do think this is a kind of a fun assignment. Give you some practice with exercise prescription. It's been due for a while, not till March 28th, I believe. I'd like to give you guys ample time to work on things. Purchase this because it is somewhat of a tedious assignment. And it's not something you want to save for like the day before. Yep. Is that like one place for all 3 chapters?
I believe it is. Yep. I've combined them all. The PowerPoint is also combined. Yeah. Okay, we have a couple more minutes here. Yes, ma'am.
The graph on the last page is really hard to read.
It's on the internet. Yeah, you can look at the book, but it's also on the modules.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, it didn't print very great, fortunately. Huh? Not until March 28th. We'll talk about it here in 1 minute. Literally 1 minute. Some people though. Okay, got 1:30. So this is the program design lab. It's on the schedule that we were going to discuss it this week because it's due at the end of March, which is about March 28th. Okay, you will turn this in on Canvas, and there's a rubric uploaded on Canvas as well. Can go there right now. Okay, so make sure you're going to find this in its respective module. Yep, Sunday, March 28th at 11:59 p.m. You can go through and look through the rubric here as far as how you're being scored. But looking at this, I really need you guys to pay very close attention to when we're talking about this today, because I think students maybe don't keep this in front of them, or they kind of start daydreaming when I'm talking about it in class. And then they turn it in and I'm like, oh, we talked about that. We talked like, this is what you're supposed to do in this section, okay? So pay very close attention. And then as you start to work on it, if you're still uncertain about something, please email me or ask me in class, all right? Okay, so it says for this lab, you will put together a simple 6-week program that includes all major physical activity components for health, aerobic, resistance, flexibility, neuromotor. Provide enough detail that your client could follow the plan on his or her own. Clearly state 3 SMART goals for your client, and you may consider using the template provided on the 3rd page or referring to your textbook. So here are the components of the lab. The program overview, the SMART goals, exercise prescription, and the exercise schedule. Okay, so it's a total of 44 points. Again, it's tedious. This should take you a good amount of time, which is why I've made it worth of 44 points, which is almost worth what one of your first 2 exams is worth, okay? Everyone is getting the same client. Her name is Sarah, and she is a 74-year-old woman who suffers from osteopenia. So she hasn't quite been diagnosed with osteoporosis, but it does mean she has low bone mineral density, okay? Her BMI is 21. Her resting heart rate is 70. She has never done resistance training. When she was younger, she used to play tennis and golf, but has been sedentary for the past 10 years. She has 3 grandchildren and wants to be able to take them on walks. And her medical doctor has cleared her to begin an exercise program with moderate workloads, okay? The first part of this is the program overview. We're 10 points. It says, based on Sarah's information, explain how or why you will design a program to fit her needs. Include information about how you're going to address her limitations. Students oftentimes skip over that. You need to discuss in that section how you're going to address her limitations. She's been sedentary for 10 years. She has osteopenia. Okay, these are things you need to take into consideration. You need to also include an estimated heart rate range for meeting the recommended intensity level. So you're really going to determine at what intensity should she be exercising at. Okay, this is, you're given a broad of what intensity should she be exercising at based on what her current fitness level is. And you see that formula for target heart rate. So we know first of all, we're going to have to figure out what her max heart rate is, right? Because we're going to base a lot of everything off of what her max heart rate is. And you already were provided her heart rate, her resting heart rate up there, which was 70. I've bolded this part. Be sure to calculate and include the following, because students seem to forget to do this as well. So you're going to provide an estimate of really a range of what she should be working at. Okay, a percentage range followed by her heart rate range. If you're saying she should work at, 50 to 65% of her max, what does that correspond to as far as her heart rate goes? Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, good. Okay, that's how we're going to monitor her right through her workouts. Her goal is to take her grandchildren. This is just an overarching goal. Her goal is to take her grandchildren on walks. So it will be important to connect with that often in the program so she stays motivated. So there's that specificity. Her goal includes walking. So how are you going to build up to that goal in your program? How are you going to replicate that in your program? The next piece is the SMART goals, okay? And you need to include 3 SMART goals. So we gave you one broad goal of Sarah's, and that is to be able to walk with her children, right? Walk with her grandchildren. I want you to think about all the things that could be happening as she's walking with her grandchildren, okay? If you've ever went on walks with kids, I'm tired. I can't walk anymore. Oh, we fell down. Oh, we got a tire shoe. Oh, we got this. Okay. It's never just walking. So I want you to be thinking about what those walks could actually look like. And again, how do you make her workout specific to get her fit enough for doing those walks? Robbie, you have a question.
Are you saying like maybe work her up to how like packing something on her back because the kid gets tired? Would that be like a thing?
It could, or carrying in the front. We know that she's probably going to need some upper body and core strength. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. I'm not going to give you too much based on who she's going to be walking with. So these are SMART goals, right? You need to make them very specific. They need to be measurable, right? They need to have some time component to them. And then we go into detail about SMART goals. I'm not going to take the time to read all of that. Okay. The next section is the exercise prescription section. Let me go down there for you guys, sorry. So this section right here, if you guys can see it. Okay, this is worth 16 points. And I bumped up the amount that this is worth because students were breezing over this and not spending much time on it. So I wanted to kind of get a red flag out there as to, hey, this is worth a lot of points. You need to spend a lot of time on this part because this is the part that is going to inform your exercise schedule that you craft for Sarah. Okay, whatever you write for your exercise prescription for these fitness components, aerobic, resistance, flexibility, neuromotor, it needs to be replicated here. We need to see that it all correlates, that it aligns, okay, within the actual exercise schedule that you build for her. So for each of the exercise components, you need to address fit. So here's the example for frequency for aerobic, okay? For a moderate intensity exercise program, Sarah should aim to exercise 5 or more days per week. Since she has been sedentary for the past 10 years, it will be important to ease her into that frequency. So she will start with 2 days a week and then add an extra day every 2 weeks so that by the end of the 8-week program, she is exercising at least 5 days per week. That means if that's what I just wrote, I need to see that progression in the exercise schedule. Okay, does that make sense? Good. You need to write and clarify about her intensity for aerobic, about the time that she should be spending for aerobic, and what type of aerobic activities are you going to include and why? Keep in mind her limitations when you're selecting those activities, okay? You're going to do that whole thing, okay? Address every piece of fit for all of these, for each of these components. Resistance, flexibility, and neuromotor as well. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. The last piece there is the exercise schedule. What I really want you to be careful about and what students have lost points for in the past is copying, pasting the same exact thing for 6 weeks in a row. Okay, try to get some variability in there. You know, one of the things that we talked about is one reason people don't exercise or they stop exercise because they get bored. So include some variability. It's okay if you want to do, you know, kind of the same, address the same fitness components on the same days of the week. But first and foremost, this schedule should show what? Huh? Improvement, what's a better word for improvement? Progression, okay? This exercise schedule needs to show progression, meaning you're adding a new stimulus. You're adding a new stimulus. Is this every 2 weeks? Is this every 3 weeks? Okay, again, it's only 6 weeks that you have to create, but it's really important that it is all aligns with your exercise prescription and that it shows that progression, okay? And that every piece of the fitness components are on there. Aerobic, resistance, flexibility, and neuromotor, okay? So again, it's gonna take some time. Do not save it for the day before because you will likely get tired while you're doing it. You'll get a little fatigued. It'll be a little more tedious than you thought. And then you'll probably start to slack off and then your grade will kind of suffer. Just what I've noticed over the last few years since we've been doing this assignment. Okay, you have, it's only March 2nd, 3rd, 2nd. So you have 26 days. Okay, spend some time on it and do a good job with it. Any questions? Okay, if you lose this paper, again, this is up on the modules. And just to clarify, you are submitting it here on Canvas. Okay. All right. Let's move to, we're going to move to chapters 9 through 11 this week. And I think I mentioned, but I have put all of these 3 chapters together on one PowerPoint. All right. So you're going to find them all within this week's module. We're going to start by talking about children and adolescents. So this is up to the age of 17. Well, we know a lot of this already, but we know that physical activity and good nutrition are good ways, are 2 great ways, actually, of lowering certain diseases, okay? It's really funny, my 6-year-old daughter asked me last night, how do we prevent, or what do we do to prevent a stroke or a heart attack? My 6-year-old asked me that, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, right? But she did it at bed, so of course she was stalling to go to sleep, but still. And I'm just like excited about this question, but I'm like, why is a 6-year-old thinking about stroke and heart attack? 6-year-olds don't think about strokes and heart attacks. Well, she'd been listening to the radio, right, and lots of commercials about strokes and heart attacks, and so now she's worried that she could have a stroke or a heart attack. So she's asking me these questions, and I'm telling her, well, this is why mom and dad make you eat your vegetables, and you know, you don't want to eat these certain things, but we try to force you to. This is why we tell you we have to get outside and exercise. But those are chronic diseases, stroke, you know, heart disease, chronic diseases. And I was telling her that it starts at a young age, though, that what we do as kids is really going to set us up and determine what our life as an adult looks like. And that's so true. So heart disease, you know, blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, these are all diseases that can be prevented if children are getting adequate information and have access to good nutrition, etc., when they're young, so they can develop that healthy lifestyle. Also, anxiety and depression may be reduced in children and adolescents who are physically active on a regular basis. You think this is true for adults as well? Definitely. Okay, definitely. They display higher levels of aerobic and muscular fitness. Then we're going to see decreased body comp, so lower amounts of non-force producing tissue or less fat mass on bodies, and we're going to have stronger bones. So that hopefully, Sarah, although she's 74, right? 74 and only osteopenic, that's actually decent. There's a lot of women in their 70s who are already considered to be osteoporotic. Bless you.
So what does the nutrition look like? For 2 years and older, right? We're looking for mainly fruits and vegetables, dietary fiber, whole grains. Those a lot go hand in hand, although that fiber is going to come from the fruits and vegetables as well. Fat-free and low fat dairy products. So a lot of people think that, let's say you take a 1-year-old and you're changing that 1-year-old from breastfeeding to cow's milk. You do not need to switch that child to whole fat milk, okay? You really don't. That's kind of this natural assumption, like these kids need this fat. It's not true, okay? They have lots of other sources of fat that they get in their diet. So drinking whole milk is not a necessity. We definitely want to limit the intake of solid fats. So those are your saturated fats, okay? Cholesterol, here's the kicker, right? Where does cholesterol come from? What type of products? Let me ask it this way. What type of products have cholesterol?
Fried foods.
Huh?
Fried foods.
Good. Fried foods, yes, based on the oils and how it was prepared. Anything that comes from an animal, though, is going to have cholesterol.
Cheese.
Okay, cheese, yep. All of those good. We just set up here, we need dairy products. Well, the reason they're saying we need just fat-free, low-fat, kids don't need the cholesterol. The more fat that there is in that dairy product or in that product that comes from the animal, the more cholesterol there is. We're going to limit the amount of sodium. My husband loves salt, and maybe I told you this, but when we were first married, I didn't hardly cook with salt. And he thought I was a terrible cook, let's just be honest, okay? And then over the years, I started using a little bit more salt. My husband is the guy who goes into the Mexican restaurant and salts the tortilla chips. It's serious, okay?
You lick them too. So
Oh, okay, well, that's what my children want to do now. And so now, because my children have watched my husband salt everything, it's the natural occurrence when we sit down at dinner, they all want to reach for the salt and pepper. And I'm like, no, you don't get salt, okay? You don't need to salt your food. First reason, your palate is not even developed. You're still developing all these taste buds and learning flavors and what you like, and I'm not going to destroy that by loading you up on salt yet. I let them put pepper on. And again, I think it's just the whole process thing. But if there is something with salt, yes, Robbie, my children will lick the salt off of it and then eat whatever the salt was on. So we need to really look at that sodium, that intake of sodium. It's not necessary at their age. Extra sugars, juice. Parents like to buy juice for their kids because it has lots of vitamins in it. Okay, juice is jam-packed with sugar. Kids really can get that from other things, fruits that don't have the added sugars. There's other ways to get those vitamins and minerals without giving them the juice that has all the sugar and added sugar to it. And then those refined grains, right? So those grains that have been through the processing, meaning we want to stick with the whole grains. We want to stick with the wheat, those things that have been unrefined. Did your parents ever tell you when you were growing up, clean your plate? Steven's already shaking his head, yes. Okay, clean your plate. What do you think might be wrong with this?
Overeating.
Casey, did you say overeating?
Yeah.
Yes. Are we making the assumption that parents know how to portion for their kids? We are, okay? We're assuming that parents know how to make portion sizes for that children, and unfortunately, that's not the truth. A lot of parents are unaware of what a portion size is for them, and definitely what it should be for their children. Okay, I think I told you one time, like the portion size for spaghetti is like this. It's tiny. That's not how we portion for ourselves. So then if ours is this much, what do you think the child is, right? So everything has to be taken into consideration. And this is why we've kind of moved away from this whole Clean the Plate Club. I'm pretty good at now. I ask my children, are you full? are you full? Okay, I don't want them to keep eating if they're full, because then we train that overeating for a long period of time, and that's how we start eating all the time. We overeat. Okay, and does it ever feel good? No, it never feels good. It just hurts. Okay. Too much fat intake, insufficient intake. You're gonna see a lot of vitamins and minerals that are thrown around between all of these age groups. But what I will say is that there's a lot of overlap. For a lot of adults, we're lacking in the intake of calcium and vitamin D. Well, look at this. For children, lacking insufficient intake of calcium and iron, as well as vitamins A, D, and C, and folic acid. There's a reason prenatal vitamins are really important, packed with folic acid to help with neurological development. Okay. Calcium and iron, a lot of things are fortified with iron now. They're starting to put iron into things, especially if it's a whole grain item. Usually you're going to see that there's iron in that as well. Meat products have iron. But again, if you don't have access to pay for meat, right? Meat's expensive. You guys go to like Costco and buy something, it's expensive. You spend money for sure. So if it's a money issue or just general access to that, kids aren't going to have the protein or the meat that has the iron in it. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see this very well, but these are ways of implementing dietary guidelines for youth. So use recommended portion sizes, that's at the top. One way that I found is very helpful is oftentimes just using smaller plates, right? Because our normal plate sizes now are like this. But they used to be like this. Years ago, they were very, very small, and they've continued to grow. And so there's a good reason for kids' plates, okay? Not only are they usually plastic and handy-dandy in that fashion, but because they're smaller, you tend to portion smaller and more adequately for who they are, their size. Another would be to remove the skin from the poultry before eating. Okay, everyone in here probably like, that's the best part of the chicken. And it is. It's the great part. But it does have a lot of sodium, a lot of fat, a lot of that cholesterol. That's where a lot of it collects, okay? Reduce your salt intake. Reduce added sugars. Definitely the sweetened drinks, okay? Even be careful. There's a lot of ways that marketing companies like to go around this, I'm gonna pick on one right now, Honest Co, okay? They have like little juice boxes. You guys are familiar with those? Maybe not because you don't have children, okay? But they have little juice boxes and they're literally like this size. I mean, they're tiny. And a couple of years ago, my 6-year-old kind of had this lactose intolerance thing going on. Anyway, her teacher was giving her these juice boxes instead of the milk. And I'm like, I'm not a crazy parent, I promise. But I am a little bit, I want to know what they're intaking and I want to have some control over that. And these juice boxes, again, that are very tiny, have like 10 to 12 grams of sugar in them. And they're tiny. And so parents, they see that sign that says Honest. They think, okay, it's organic, it's healthy, it's whatever. But again, what else is the kid drinking through the day? How many times is that kid getting juice throughout the day? Or what else is he or she eating that is giving that added sugar? Juice is mostly going to be adding to that added sugar intake for the day. Limit high calorie sauces. Who in here likes Alfredo? Okay, it's usually a favorite amongst several people. Unfortunately, it's just jam-packed with fat, right? Jam-packed with fat, meaning higher calories, overall tons of calories in one portion size of this. So we can limit those things: cream cheese, cheese sauces in general, cholesterol, fat, intake. Ensure the whole grain is the first ingredient on the food label. Eat legumes in place of meat for some entrees. And read food labels. Again, parents will often just see the front of the product and think, oh, that's healthy. but not look at the back where the nutrition label is to really see what it's made up of. Who in here likes cereal? Yeah, kind of, some people, okay. Have you ever like looked at the sugar content in your cereal? Have you ever tried to go down the cereal aisle and find one with a very low amount of sugar in it? It is like impossible, okay? Literally like the healthiest one is just Cheerios. No flavor, right? There's absolutely, huh?
Cheerios is loud.
Yeah, there's a few.
Just regular, not honey nut, nothing, just regular old Cheerios, right? Well, if you're a kid, it kind of gets bland, right? But if you go down the cereal aisle, it is nearly impossible to find any cereal that has like less than 10 grams, okay? One that I found that my kids like, and they don't eat it every morning for sure, is actually Honey Bunches of Oats. And I would have thought that that would have been more. That is actually less than Honey Nut Cheerios. And you wouldn't expect that, but it actually has less. It just go down the cereal aisle and try to find one. Here's the deal. Try to find one with less than 5 grams. That is your challenge for the week if you go to the store. All right, some of you guys are young enough that you may recognize this. Anybody? If you went to your pediatrician yearly, they probably tracked this, okay? Generally what we're looking for is for a child to be between the 5th and 85th percentile for weight and height. Okay, more so important here is going to be what that weight looks like. Being between the 5th and 85th is pretty important. However, I've definitely seen kids that were in the 99th percentile for weight. And what happened?
Oh.
Huh?
They lost it.
Yeah, I mean, they lost it. Maybe they started walking, they started running. I'm talking little kids here, okay? And they started losing some of that weight and they leaned up and however they were as 9 months old did not determine how they were at 22 years old, right? But pediatricians do track this. It's based off of BMI. They're looking at that. They're concerned with that. And one of the main reasons is because they're looking for possible certain underlying conditions. So it's going to kind of clue them off on some things. So this is for males and this is for females. So again, just that range is what's considered to be healthy. I included this because this has been a push from some years ago from ChooseMyPlate.gov. But the push is to make your plate half fruits and vegetables, okay? Make your plate half fruits and vegetables. Did you know though, at a lot of the schools during all this COVID stuff, they actually got rid of salad bars? Okay, so they took salad bars away because obviously they didn't want kids exchanging and handling, etc. And so they took that option away from kids. And now it's a lot of them, very much just the servers, you know, putting whatever on the plate if they're a hot luncher. Who was a hot luncher growing up? Kind of a hot topic. Who was a cold luncher? Some people, okay. Yeah, my daughter's a cold luncher, and she asks me almost every day, can I be a hot luncher? I just want to try. I just want to try to be a hot. It's like the coolest thing ever if you try to be a hot luncher. Like, oh, one day you will know. Okay, you probably cannot see this, but this is daily estimated calories for various ages, okay? So for a 1-year-old, we're looking about 900 calories for the day. 2 to 3-year-old, we're talking toddlers here, about 1,000 calories. 4 to 8, 1,400 calories for the males and about 1,200 for females. 9 to 13, 1,800 for males and about 1,600 for females. And then that 14 to 18, that's where you kind of get more to where you would be at this day and age. And that would be about 2,200 calories for the males and about 1,800 for females. Now again, this is going to vary based on how active the child is or adolescent is. I like to include this because it's kind of shocking. And this data are only accurate up to 2015. okay? So since the 1970s, the prevalence of obesity in American youth has increased from 5 to 10% in ages 2 to 5. So those toddlers. Oh, we're talking obesity. We're not talking overweight, guys. We're talking obesity in toddlers, okay? 6.5 to 17 in ages 6 to 11, 5 to 18% in ages 12 to 19. So those are some big numbers. Do you think it's gone up or down? Okay. I don't know, obviously with COVID, I think there's been the option. I think there's definitely two options, right? Either kids got more active, they were at home, but maybe they were outside a lot and they tried to be really active, but maybe that wasn't the case at all. Maybe they didn't really have anywhere to go, maybe they didn't have a yard, right? Parks were closed, they didn't have access to physical activity in that sense. And so I think sedentary lifestyle could be a very profounding factor here. I also think that we're looking at budget cuts. This isn't just as of now, although schools last year to this year faced a tremendous amount of budget cuts, okay, because of COVID, because of lower enrollment, just because in general funding across the board, federally, state. And so because of that, a lot of physical education programs have been cut at schools. Even looking at my 6-year-old daughter, and I'm gonna reference her, I am, so I apologize, but the school that she attends, once COVID set in this year, to abide by some of the COVID guidelines, what they did is they have certain classes that will go to PE every day of the week for 1 week. And then the next week they go to music. And then the next week they go to, thank you, art. Okay, so it was actually library, because their music and art is like intertwined, but yeah. So anyway, she is only going to PE every 3rd week. Okay, so every 3rd week she gets to go to PE. And of course, that's just like a terrible idea, if you ask me, right? I mean, thankfully they still get to go outside for recess. But as we're going to talk soon here about the difference between structured and unstructured physical activity, structured physical activity is really important for children, especially toddler and above. So hopefully, you know, when you guys have kids and whatnot, your kids aren't going to be in one of those schools where physical education is not included because there's just been that many budget cuts. Okay. So as I just referenced, this is the fit for, and I'm gonna say it's a loose fit, okay? It's a saggy fit for these age groups. We're talking infants, which is considered to be birth to 1 year old. For them, all we're really looking to do for physical activity is just, you know, oftentimes that means setting them on the floor, letting them try to roll. If they're practicing sitting up, let them practice that. If they're trying to crawl, let them practice that. About the age of 3 months, they kind of start grasping at things. So I'm sure you've seen seats and toys and whatnot that hang over them. It's good for them to practice, great for motor skill development. So it's a lot of just letting them explore and letting them try to figure out how to control their body, what muscles to use to move, okay? For toddlers, we're gonna get a little bit more specific. Toddlers are 1 to 3, and there's a differentiation here because a lot of people would consider 3 to 5 toddlers. Well, here we're gonna consider those 3 to 5 year olds as preschoolers, okay, per ACSM. So for the toddlers, we're looking at 30 minutes of structured physical activity and 60 minutes of unstructured, okay? We want this to be moderate to vigorous physical activity. And the difference between structured and unstructured here is that it's something where you're giving instructions to the child and you want that child to follow the instructions. Maybe you set up an obstacle course and the kid's going through the obstacle course. I don't know if any of you got, well, I do know. One person did gymnastics. Did anybody else in here do gymnastics growing up? Steven? Yeah? Okay. So they like to set up a lot of different, obstacle courses, or do this, move this way, go through this tunnel, whatever it is. That's great. It's structured. Okay. They're taking instructions and then they're going through that process. Unstructured physical activity is just that. They run outside and they're playing on the monkey bars, going down the slides, okay, playing on the swings, whatever it is. You're not giving them specific instructions. You're just letting them kind of run wild free. For the preschoolers, we're looking now at 60 minutes of structured and 60 minutes of unstructured. This is supposed to be daily. Okay, these are supposed to be daily occurrences. So depending on what the situation is for a child, this could be really easy or this could be really difficult. Okay, again, during COVID, if there's a lot of places still very much kind of in lockdown. I have a sister and brother-in-law that live in Pennsylvania, and they're still primarily working from home. There's all the kids are doing school virtually. I mean, it's because there's so many people, right? Population is so large. So you look at that situation, people live in an apartment, condo or something like that, and they don't have access to the outside or to gyms, and they're not kind of taking the initiative to set things up and get their kids doing structured physical activity, then they're missing it. So really important. At this age, 5 years old, they're going to kindergarten. So they do get unstructured for sure. They are supposed to get structured via PE, although they're not always going to go to PE every single day. So the unstructured is accomplished through recess. Here's the adolescents, so this is 6 to 17. We're looking for aerobic fitness, 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous per day. Okay, 60 minutes, moderate to vigorous per day, most days of the week. Ideally, this should include some structure, right? This shouldn't be accomplished just through recess. This could be accomplished through them being in soccer, basketball, whatever, so they're going to practice, etc. Those are great ways to meet these requirements. Muscular and bone strengthening. A portion of the recommended 60 minutes should include muscle strengthening at least 3 days a week. Okay, so usually at this point I have a question like, should kids lift weights? Okay, and what I like to say here is that there's a lot of conflicting research out there. You will meet people who are like, no, a kid should not touch a weight till they are, almost 18 years old. No, you should not have anybody doing power cleans until they're in college, right? I've met people like that, believe it or not, at various conferences. And I have to say, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think for children, it's really important, especially we have body weight exercises, push-ups, right? Curl-ups. All those, those endurance things you did the other day, you felt really great about. Okay, those are great strengthening activities for children. Do I think a 10-year-old needs to max out on bench? No, I don't. I think that's a great way to get hurt. Okay, there are, various disputes out there about the growth plates, etc., and causing damage to the growth plates. Those are things to take into consideration. But usually we're not looking at those issues if the child is doing things in moderation and isn't being asked to max out on certain things. It's just not necessary. But it is important to increase overall strength. For increasing strength, we're also increasing bone mineral density. okay? And then we're also increasing your basal metabolic rate. So that kid is gonna be burning more calories at rest than he or she would otherwise. Doing okay? So these are just some examples, and you're gonna see a lot of crossover here. Moderate intensity activities for children versus adolescents, bicycle riding, brisk walking, we see that over here as well. I like this one, housework and yard work. That just gives me all the more reason to assign those tasks to my children. Okay, vigorous activity, you know, jumping rope, running, being involved in sports is usually where we see this over here with the adolescents. And then bone strengthening, they like to put the game of tug of war up here. Well, I don't see this very often anymore. I think it's a really fun one, but I don't see it being utilized very much. And there's a lot of games that were taken away, maybe even since you guys were in school, but I know since I was in school, they got taken away because they were too worried people were gonna get hurt, or it was maybe demeaning to one gender or another, etc. So there's been different things like that that have happened. But kids still these days love like hopscotch. Anything with hopping, jumping, skipping. My kids will jump out off of anything, about break their legs. It's kind of scary. So kids usually like that type of thing. And then this is just looking at, if we look overall at exercise prescription, how you move through your life, okay? When you're young, you see general physical activity, emphasis on motor skills. That's where I'm talking about that newborn at 3 months, right? They're reaching, they're grasping. We're working on technical skills here, working to develop those motor skills. But as you do that more and more, you get more efficient at it. And then you don't have to work on those motor skills as much because you've become pretty proficient with it. On the other hand, when you're a newborn, you don't need to really be doing jumping jacks and running on the treadmill and those sorts of things. You're going to build up to that. Your motor skills will get better, which means your coordination will improve, which means doing these prescriptive physical activities is going to be easier. Okay, let's take a break. About a 3-minute break. Get up and walk around if you can, please.
My lower back, and then get ready, and I'm still freaking in so much pain. But we have a recovery tomorrow.
Everything's set up. I already have everything set up. I'm just gonna have on recovery days. You're not recovered. But you're gonna do it last 2 years. Before semesters.
Yeah, could you just again put an explanation on it? Just so I remember like what's graded. Yeah, so you like or did you have?
No, I went to Walls.
Oh, okay, so you have transfer.
Yeah.
Okay, so just write that on there and say that. Yeah, so you can come and
Pretty much. I had like 1 or 2.
okay, yeah, just put a note on there, but yeah, that's right.
So much.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Why is brain meeting? Oh, yeah, it gets pretty hot.
Okay, let's do a few slides here and then I'm gonna let you go a little early today, okay? You guys are not excited about that? It's like 60 degrees outside. It's Friday. Okay. All right, so as a refresher, real quickly, what I would like you to do is write down what the saggy, I'm calling it, fit were for each of these. Okay, try not to look at your notes. Go off your brain. Let's see.
Sorry.
All right. What did we come up with, guys? Who would like to share about what you wrote for infants? Yes, Julia.
I said it was 4 basics, more than crawling, setting up, and reaching. It's more to develop the skills.
Perfect. Nice job. Okay, what about toddlers? Casey.
30 minutes of structured exercise or physical activity, 30 minutes of unstructured physical activity.
30 and 60. 30 and 60, yep. Yep, 30 of structured, 60 of unstructured. Nice job. What about for preschoolers? Yeah, Elise. Yep. 60 of each, okay? 60 structured, 60 of unstructured. What about adolescents? What do you think, Zane?
I said it's 60 for like aerobic exercises, conditioning, things like that. Isn't it like again 60 for stretching?
We want to include 3 days a week. Yep,
Yeah,
muscle
2 to 3 days
strengthening.
a week.
Very good. So we're looking for aerobic
5 days or most days of the week, right? 60 minutes a day, and then we want to include part of that 60 minutes, 3 days a week should include muscle strengthening, bone strengthening type activities. Okay, make sure you guys remember that. You're gonna want to know those for a certain test next week. Okay, let's move to ages 18 to 64. So this is gonna be considered our adults. You've seen this before, but this is just a little graph here of showing kind of how you move through life as far as how active we're seeing individuals being. We see that as we age, getting closer to that 45, 64 range, we start to have no leisure time activity, start to become much more sedentary. I kind of referenced this before when we were talking about vitamins and minerals that children were lacking, that there's a lot of crossover about what adults have been lacking in. And we're seeing that American adults are often lacking in calcium, vitamin D. Remember, vitamin D has to be present to help the body absorb the calcium, okay? If you're not getting that vitamin D, the body is gonna have a very difficult time absorbing the calcium. So it kind of will go unutilized. Potassium, fiber, and magnesium, as well as vitamins A, C, and E. So some of those fat-soluble vitamins we're seeing insufficient intakes of. An estimated 16% of deaths in men and 9% of deaths in women are actually attributed to the missing the mark when it comes to nutrition. So they were lacking in a specific vitamin or mineral that then became very detrimental to their overall health and well-being. This looks similar, right? Isn't this everything we just talked about for kids? Okay, sodium, we know 2,300 milligrams per day. We're trying to stay under that. Saturated fat, we're trying to stay less than 10% of your daily caloric intake. And added sugars. Beverages account for almost half of the added sugars that we're seeing adults consume. We've talked a lot about that one. This says avoid snacks, sweets, and beverages. I'm missing a parentheses there, but avoid snacks that have added sugars in them, okay? Don't think snacking is bad, by all means, but I think we need to be very cognizant of what we're snacking on and how it's overall contributing to our daily caloric intake. Snacks are usually 200 calories or less, okay? That's what we're looking for ideally when it comes to snacks. Hey, this just popped in my head, but I learned today that our hearts on average burn about 440 calories a day. Okay, so our hearts and our brains actually burn more calories a day than our muscles. Isn't that crazy? Even though a heart's a muscle. But if we break it down, that's like 200 beats for 1 calorie. That seems really low, doesn't it? Your heart would beat about 200 times before it burns about 1 calorie. 1 calorie is equal to about 3,500. Well, yeah. Sorry, 3,500 calories in about 1 pound. Okay, so kind of crazy. You totally can't see this, but this is just different food groups and ideally what we're looking for based off of a 2,000 calorie diet. I'm not going to go into detail on this because this was something very much similar to this was presented in the nutrition chapter. But again, for example, fruits, we're looking for about 2 cups a day for fruits. And so these are good things to reference. This is all going to be a refresher because we've been talking up till chapter 9. Everything we've really been talking about has been pointed and directed at adults. So now we're talking about adults and we see this breakdown as far as physical activity guidelines go. Moderate intensity, that's that 30 minutes a day. 5 days a week. That's how we get to the 150 minutes a week for moderate intensity activity for an adult. The vigorous intensity, again, we can drop that down based on that 2-to-1 ratio. So we would be looking about 3 days a week at 20 minutes if you're exercising vigorously. And that's where it gets really hard to, for someone to say they don't have time, because it's 20 minutes, 3 days a week. So that becomes kind of an important piece of information that we can get out there. If you're working vigorously, you actually only need to work out 60 minutes a week. And then a combination of moderate to vigorous, which I think a lot of people do engage in, so it would be 20 to 30 minutes per day, 3 to 5 days a week. Neuromuscular flexibility and neuromotor, right? 2 to 3 days per week. Same here with the neuromotor flexibility. We're looking at 20 to 30 seconds for static hold. 45 minutes a session for that neuromotor balance, coordination, agility type of work. What are some of the signs that you are improving, that your aerobic conditioning is actually improving? Your resting heart rate is lower. Okay, resting heart rate could be lower. When doing the same activity, your heart rate and perception or rate of perceived exertion is lower. So you can work out at the same intensity that you were 4 weeks ago, but now it feels easier. And now your heart isn't working as hard. Your heart rate returns to those resting levels quicker after you're done exercising. That's one great informative way. Okay? You just have a really, really hard bout of exercise. How long does it take your heart rate to go back down to a pre-existing level? You're able to complete the same number of minutes of activity, but a higher intensity. So working out for the same duration, but you're increasing your intensity during that duration. You're able to continue longer at the same intensity. So now maybe you're running further, right? At the same intensity, you're able to withhold it, but now you can go further, longer. You are increasing the total time you spend exercising each week. So overall, your volume, right, that volume and progression BP, those things are increasing. Those are great ways to know that your aerobic conditioning has been improved based on your exercise prescription. Okay. All right, let's stop there for today.
Thanks a lot. We'll meet back here on Thursday. We'll finish up with this chapter as well as chapter 11. And then next Tuesday, we have our exam review. Next Thursday, no class because you will be taking your exam. Okay? Have a great day. Try to get outside and enjoy the weather while you can.